Reptile Fight Club. I am your host, Justin Newlander. Here with me as always, Rob Stone. What is up?
Oh, nothing. This is great. I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, I'm having a good week. My proposal is done, so it's about ready to be submitted. So hopefully we got some funding coming in because things are not looking great right now. We're in pretty dire situation, I guess. Science in America is not doing well. It's a little sick right now, but I guess those kind of things happen. We'll see what happens. See how that goes.
Hope for the best.
Yeah, hopefully some funding is coming soon. But yeah, cool. So well, tonight we've got Brendan Hettinger with us. Hettinger or Hettinger?
I say Hettinger.
Hettinger. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people say it different ways.
That's kind of what I said, I think. Close. No. Yeah, I'm sure you get a lot. I get the same thing, Juliander or Julander or Jalander. Yeah, but yeah, welcome. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thank you.
It's always good to talk herping, so we're gonna spend a little time on that topic in a fashion, I guess. But yeah, so I don't know what's going on in your guys' realm these days.
Not much. Just working and trying to enjoy the herping season while it's here.
Yeah.
Haven't been able to get out too much. I've been trying to get out every other weekend. I just started a new job, and it's been a lot trying to get out and go down to Southeast Colorado or even further out of state. But
nice.
I've made a couple good trips, and I know there's a few more that are on the horizon with the season coming to a close. But yeah, very cool.
I should go out tonight. It rained today, so that's always good to have a little rain on a hot day. But I don't know. I need to get out again. I need to get out more, but I guess that's always the case, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Get out more. I went out the other night, didn't see much, I guess that's the way it goes. Sometimes you get skunked, but my area is a little less diverse, I guess, than some parts of the state, but it's fun species around. We had Rob out not too long ago for some rubber boas, a gopher snake, a couple sagebreast lizards, I think, maybe a racer or two. Yeah.
That's awesome. What part of the country are you in?
I'm way up in north of Utah, so your neighboring state. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I know Rob went up to Wyoming, and I went up there earlier this year to participate in a midget faded rattlesnake pit tagging project.
Oh, cool! Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to go look for them around. Was it around like Flaming Gorge, that area? Or
yeah.
I want to get up there. Rob took a little trip through there.
We're on the way up there. Yeah. And Brendan had come out your way, I think a little further to the southeast, but earlier than I did in the year, trying to look for rubber boas amongst others, right? And with no success. So I'm sure he'll be open to pointers from you.
Yeah, that was like one of my first pets when I was a kid was a midget faded rattlesnake. Well, maybe not the first pet, but I think I was a junior in high school and I found one on a hiking trip. I didn't realize it was against the law to keep them, so my parents were really cool, let me bring it home, and I kept it for a long time. It only had a button when I found it, and it ate mice and survived. And it was a nice looking snake, really red and got really faded out and stuff from down in southern Utah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a fun pet, but it never settled down. Like, it would always rattle at me, which is kind of the opposite of the ones up near Flaming Gorges. I've heard they're really pretty chill up there. Like, they don't.
Yeah,
I guess it can probably vary like anything, but
for sure. But we found like between 40 and 50 snakes within like a 3-4 day span, and I don't recall a single one striking. We had a couple individuals that were actually missing their rattles.
Right.
Large females that were missing their rattles, and they were all relatively calm compared to like Viridis and Atrox.
Right.
So it was really cool to see those. That was the first time I'd seen the species, and it was a cool time.
Yeah, they're a neat snake for sure. But yeah, obviously sounds like a little bit of differences because all the ones that I've seen down in southern Utah have been kind of hyper, at least, to some extent. I guess the ones we saw on the last trip weren't too terribly bad. like that Hopi rattlesnake, both of them, I guess, were pretty on, just keyed in, but
feeling the viridis influence.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they're fun species for sure. Yeah. Well, I've just been assist feeding pygmy pythons and trying to get picky Antaresia to eat, but things are going pretty good. All the jungles are eating now, and most of them are on rats, and got some inlands that started and are looking good. And so, yeah, the captive herps are doing well. Do you keep any herps?
Yeah, I actually have some rubber boas, rhino rat snakes. What else? I have Egyptian tortoises, Vietnamese black-breasted leaf turtles, some radiated tortoises, ornate box turtles, three-toed box turtles, and a group of Russian tortoises, just to name a few of the species I keep. But
that's very cool. I've always been interested in those Egyptian tortoises. That's really cool. Are you involved with the Egyptian Tortoise Preservation Group, or? Yeah,
I'm actually a founding member for. It's called CAP, the Clementi Assurance Program project. Yeah, Ralph Till was the one that kind of organized that and got us all involved. And
yeah, that's where I heard about it from. He was on Ryan DeMoss's podcast.
Yeah, he's been on a couple podcasts talking about, I know, like the Animals at Home podcast and some other stuff.
Yeah, it's really a cool project. Really neat to see that, people are doing right with them.
Trying to. We don't have much genetics to work with, but we'll try and make it work.
Yeah, that's cool. Nice. Well, it's a good group, it sounds like.
Yeah, so far so good. We've donated some other animals across the country to some other keepers this year, and we've gotten some animals in some AZA institutions. So we're trying to hopefully get some more participation with the AZA, but we'll see where that goes.
That's cool. I saw an interesting method of keeping, though. Somebody had like their vivarium set up with like a fogger in like a hide area, like kind of mimicking a burrow system or something like that. I thought was really interesting. Is that a common practice, or is that just kind of some one-off thing?
I think that's Garden State Tortoise that did that a while ago that I saw in the video. I used to use a fogger that would turn on for about 30 minutes every morning. And now I've just been spraying them in the morning when the lights come on and spraying their food. And that seems to be enough moisture to get some good smooth growth and get them active and eating in the morning.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So some people do that. I think it's just they like the higher humidity in the morning and it decreases throughout the day.
Right.
And they seem to do pretty good on that. Otherwise, if they're kept too wet, they don't thrive.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's kind of like a desert thing, right? You get that deep dew point and then fogs or dews or whatever you call it, moisture accumulates. And then, so they have that brief time of being, wet, wetter than normal. And then it gets real dry after that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably part of their life history then, if that's what you're trying to replicate.
Yeah. Kind of trying to replicate that, kind of coastal desert area, getting that coastal mist is our thought process behind it.
Yeah. It's a cool area out there. I spent a little time in Egypt back in the 90s, kind of on the Red Sea. We stayed in a kibbutz right on the Red Sea, and I was with a study abroad program, so we stayed in Jerusalem for a couple months and then went down to Egypt for a little tour thing. It was pretty sweet, but I'd love to go back and herp. That'd be really a cool place to go herp. I did some incidental herping. There was we went to the zoo in Jerusalem or in Israel somewhere. I don't even remember where it was for sure, but there was a chameleon crawling across the top of a building. And so I climbed up on top of the building and caught the chameleon. So I've got these pictures of me, with a film camera holding a chameleon and trying to do a selfie back in the day. It's kind of crazy.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And then I found some snake. I didn't know if it was venomous or not. So I was just trying to be careful with it. And I had it in the bathtub of our room and then took a picture of it with the film camera. It didn't turn out the best, but then I released it. It was kind of sketchy, maybe. I don't know if this is. I think it might have nipped me or something. It tried to bite me, but So I need to dig out those pictures and try to see if I can ID it someday.
Yeah. That's super cool.
Yeah, it was fun. But a lot of cool herps out there for sure. So
yeah.
I guess not many Egyptian tortoises in the wild these days, though. Maybe in certain areas, but
yeah, there's some. According to iNaturalist, there's some left in Israel, and then there's a lot in Libya. No more, as far as I understand it, in Egypt. They've been extirpated from there,
right?
And apparently, they're also getting smuggled from Libya to Egypt to be sold in the markets there. And I think they're trying to crack down on it, but I haven't heard of much success or anything really being done.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, the failing of the endangered species or the CITES thing, where you're protecting them outside of their habitat. So people like you can't breed them, and, there's no commercial incentive to do so. But then folks in their country will trade them back and forth illegally just for food or whatever. Are they eating them, or are they keeping them, or what are they doing with them?
Yeah, they just sell them for pets. And in the markets. Someone posted in the Turtle and Tortoise Preservation Group a little while back that went to Egypt that they were like kind of in bird cages, like the kind of metal screen stacked on top of each other, and they were selling them for like the equivalent of like $10 US, as pets. And there's a lot of people that join the Facebook groups, and they're like, oh, I got this tortoise from the market, how do I take care of it? And they're like, you probably shouldn't have that. And they usually end up passing just due to the stress and improper conditions.
That's frustrating. You'd think they'd just be able to keep them in their yard or something, give them the right habitat or something, do okay with them outside. But
I think there's a few people there that are doing good with them and trying to do something, but I think that's many years down the road before they start reintroducing or create any kind of breeding groups and in situ.
Yeah. So. Well, that's I guess the big argument against that, like listing of blue tree monitors. If the people just decided, we're going to start, just killing them or selling them or whatever, it's not much that anybody could really do to stop that, and where they're kind of a limited range.
Yeah.
Listing them here isn't going to do a thing if the country doesn't have any buy-in. So I don't know.
That's true. But I think it's a pretty interesting point for the hobby as a whole. If you can't sell them across state lines, take the incentive away. And if you really care about a species, you kind of propagate it and hope they fall into the right hands when you gift them to someone else in the other state. That's pretty much what we're doing with CAP. Is gifting them to people that have shown extreme interest and dedication to hopefully keep the species going here in the States.
That's cool. And I think everybody should have some kind of project like that, where it's not making them any money, but they, try to do something for the benefit, just to know about it or keep it alive. I mean, I guess that comes to mind when you think about like imports that are just, it's hard to compete, but then all of a sudden they disappear and then nobody has them, or very few people have them. I shouldn't say
for sure.
I'll get in trouble with Rob if I say nobody, but that's really cool. Nice. I'd love to work with tortoises at some point, but I don't know. I don't have the focus for tortoises right now,
Well, we'll have to talk after the episode, see if we can set you up with something.
Right. Are they more fecund than like larger? I mean, I assume they breed earlier or as a smaller species. Is that the case?
They tend to mature within like 5 years of age. Yeah. So slower than I'd say a sulcata, maybe a little bit on par with a sulcata, but
interesting.
They have to be roughly 5 years of age, and the females need to be roughly 300 grams, 350 plus to really produce. And they can lay a couple clutches, but their eggs, like the clutches are like anywhere between 1 to 3 eggs, maybe 5. And they can lay about 3 times in a season, depending on the season and how the female's doing. Right. But a lot of breeders don't get much more than like 50% hatch rate. There's been a couple people this year anyway that had 100% success hatching every egg they got, which has been unheard of here for a little bit. So I'm hoping that'll change, and as husbandry changes and gets better with them, that they'll hopefully be better, more offspring. But
okay. Yeah. I guess, you think about like the Greek tortoises or the Russian tortoises or something. It seems like seems to be no shortage of those, in the wild. They're pretty dense in their populations. And they sustain a fairly heavy take from the wild, at least with the Russians. I don't know if that's a problem or if that's becoming a problem or not, but it seems like they come in pretty readily. So it makes you think they're fairly abundant in the wild if they're bringing that many in, but I don't know.
Yeah, I did hear a rumor that Russians were going to be no longer imported into the States just because the number of take has been so large. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people working with them now in the States. Yeah. But yeah, they're a super hardy tortoise. They can live here outside all year and do just fine. But
yeah, I have a friend down in Salt Lake that keeps him in his yard, and he'll just have babies hatch out in his yard, in the spring or summer or whatever. He'll just go out and the little babies crawling around. But I think he puts like hay bales and tarps over them in the winter, so they have somewhere to kind of burrow in and escape the freezing temperatures, I guess. But pretty cool.
Yeah.
They're neat. I had one for probably 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah, she was a cool tortoise for sure.
They're fun.
Oh yeah. They're a neat species for sure. Well, any other thing? Oh, let's hear how you kind of fit into herpetoculture.
Oh goodness. I like to say I'm a 50-50 split between herper and keeper. Uh-huh. I have a big background. I worked as a rattlesnake biologist, relocating rattlesnakes, tracking, pit tagging rattlesnakes here in Colorado. Cool. I was a temporary zookeeper at Denver Zoo for a little bit. I worked for Philip Leeds at Aird's Only, doing some stuff with Uromastyx.
Oh, cool. Yeah, Phil's a good guy.
Yeah, really good guy. Yeah. And I'm part of Colorado Partners of Reptile Amphibian Conservation Co-Park. Steering committee member for that. So we do a lot of projects with our native herps, tracking and conservation related, but I also keep a fair amount of species. So awesome. I'd say I'm more on the turtle side of the hobby than
sounds like it.
anything else, but yeah.
That's
a little bit of everything.
Well, the turtle and tortoise keepers seem to be the more hardcore, scientific minded, definitely working with more rare and threatened species for sure. So yeah, that's cool.
They're a pretty big commitment. You're not going to get most of these animals to reproduce until they're 5, or like my radiates until like they're 10 years old, something like that. Really, really long term.
Yeah. And I think that too weeds out the people who are just trying to make a quick buck or, that kind of thing. Unless I guess there's flippers that sell plenty of turtles and tortoises, but people that are breeding them, they're kind of in and dedicated for the long haul. It's not like a passing fancy, like, ooh, I want a tortoise,
For sure.
So that's cool. Nice. Well, sounds like you got some really cool projects, and I've always loved radiated tortoises. I remember when I was a kid, I was around 8 or 9, and my friend found a chelonian in the ditch, and he's like, I found a snapping turtle, come see it. And I was thinking, oh, cool. I want to see a snapping turtle. I didn't have any idea that they weren't native or anything like that, but ran over there and it turned out to be a desert tortoise. I'm like, this isn't a turtle, you fool. Give me that, so he let me take it home. And my dad actually knew whose it was. And it was a desert tortoise that they'd collected before, they were illegal or whatever. So it was this ancient old male. He was huge, so and my dad went and talked to him. They're like, he can keep it. It seems like he's really excited about that, And so that was my first big reptile pet, that I was able to keep. And it was a fantastic animal, just a really cool desert tortoise. He was around for a very long time. And I just kind of keep him in the yard during the summer and then bring him into the house in the winter. I had these like 2 dig marks in the corner of my closet from where he'd just sit and dig during the winter months. He'd dig through his like box that I had him in or whatever. Not the best care in the world. I mean, I was a fairly young kid, but he did pretty well. But I remember taking him up to, we called her the Turtle Lady, and she lived up in, up on the bench near my town. My dad heard about her somehow, but she let us come over to her house, and I got to bring my tortoise up there and put it with her females. She had a bunch of female and male desert tortoises that she had, were on rescue or something like that. And my male went around and just flipped all the other males and mated with the females. And she's like, well, if they lay any eggs, we'll give you some babies or whatever. And I was like, oh, sweet, And then she moved to California. She got a herd of Galapagos tortoises. So she moved to California to keep those happy. But she had a radiated tortoise. That's back to the origin, why I was saying that story. But yeah, she had a radiated tortoise, and I just was in awe of how beautiful that thing was. It was so cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, they're fun. Neat little species.
Right. Yeah, it broke my heart to see that whole thing over in Madagascar was like 10,000 radiated tortoises that were in that house thing, and that they raided and confiscated. I mean, that's just messed up,
Yeah, it's unfortunately still so common with a bunch of other species. I think right now within the States, our native box turtles are the most our biggest concern at the moment, just because they really want them over in Asia. And I think there was a large confiscation of eastern box turtles, some ornates, and some three-toed box turtles.
Right.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, it's always the struggle, I guess, is to, keep them safe in their native habitat. But I know I was really stoked this year. I got to see my first wild box turtle.
Oh,
been in their range plenty of times, just never had seen one. So
what species? See a
couple of them. It was an eastern box.
Yeah. Oh, eastern, that's cool.
Yeah, they're so beautiful. Yeah,
gorgeous.
Yeah, but I missed out on the deserts and the some of the others. I think the ones in the Arizona ones are deserts. They're the Texas ones, deserts as well. But,
yeah, subspecies of ornate. Right. A lot of people like to debate whether it's valid or not.
Yeah, as always with taxonomy.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're gonna fight about herping. So let's introduce the topic. I suppose we're going to talk about whether or not you can count a species that you see in the wild, depending on the nature of the find, I suppose. So I guess we've had a guest on before that we were talking about herp. I think it was Zach Baez talking about herping, with a tour. So I think Rob kind of formulated. Maybe you can fill us in on the topic a little, Rob, where it was your kind of brainchild.
Yeah, absolutely. So the genesis for the idea, the progenitor, was when I was on a little excursion with Brendan. He had mentioned going down, just in terms of talking where you've been, what have you been doing, and all that stuff. Talked about going some years ago, right, down to Costa Rica, associated with a tour. And I don't remember if it was the same. It opens its own can of worms, but if it was the same tour company that is associated with funding local science, conservation science, but and whether that changes things. But going on this tour of Costa Rica, and had gone and found a black-headed bushmaster, which is amazing. And
very cool.
I'm sure it was amazing to see in the wild. And the question was really, most of, if not exclusively, the herping that I've done has either been a reflection of going out with friends of mine, and that is either going to places that they're aware of, or it's trying to ideate around places, but that could incorporate research and information, does incorporate research and information. Or, as opposed to being in this sort of commercial context, right? Whatever that commercial is going to. It might be funding local science or it might be, just money in someone's pocket, whatever that is. And so the question is, how did that feel? How was that how, if at all, was that amazing feeling moderated by the context in which you'd found it, sort of in that tour context that, okay, well, the guide obviously has familiarity with that area, is aware there's at least, generally speaking, that being a relatively sedentary species. Okay, it's going to be in this area. Justin, you've previously talked about going to Costa Rica, and that literally it was, well, you can look for the police tape, and inside of there, there's going to be the viper, right? And it's to what extent is the experience of the research and the effort to kind of find and identify that bringing utility to your own experience of it, or is it just about, hey, if I'm seeing it in its native context, it's not a captive animal, that's good enough? That's really kind of the progenitor for it.
Yeah. Well, it should be a fun topic either way. So I guess we'll maybe frame it as more stringent versus less stringent. We can kind of fight about it, but I'm sure it'll just turn into the kumbaya discussion of the topic more than a fight. But we'll flip the coin just for the sake of the podcast. But go ahead and call it, Rob.
Tails.
It is heads. I want to hear your take on this, so
sure.
I'll moderate this one. So
okay,
all right, and then Brendan, go ahead and call it.
Oh, tails.
It's heads again.
Heads again. So, oh my goodness.
All right. Well, Rob, I guess you get to take the more stringent or less stringent side. You can decide.
Well, as is usual, I'll just defer. So, Brendan, you take whatever side you want, and I'll do the other one, and we can kind of chat through it. Where I want to start, though, before you get into that, is I want to hear about the black-headed bushmaster.
Yeah,
of course.
So tell us about that trip. Not only that, but the whole thing. I want to hear it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the trip, it was through this conservation organization from Colorado, the Katie Adamson Conservation Fund. They do stuff all over the world with not just reptiles, but primarily mammals and birds and all kinds of things. But I was going down to Costa Rica with a focus on moving some sea turtle nests, olive ridley sea turtle nests.
Oh, cool.
To save those from being predated and poached from people, as well as releasing baby sea turtles when they hatched from the hatchery and doing night patrol on the beach. Another focus was going to a couple different snake organizations. Rescate Serpientes is kind of a newer one. They're doing road surveys, trying to figure out what species are in the Osa Peninsula.
Mm-hmm. Where is that located? Do you know, or do you remember?
I'm so bad with the ocean.
On the Osa Peninsula.
Yeah, the Osa Peninsula. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of
down
like
in the southwest, I guess. Or basically south. You just go down to the bottom of it. And the little
southwest.
Into the Pacific side.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just do, like, they relocate fertilants from people's properties. Okay. They do that for free? And they're trying to get to funding to study a various species. So we did a tour with them, trying to figure out how the organization as a whole is going to partner with them and fund them going forward. One of the scientists, she's actually out in Colorado right now because they're having a big presentation this Saturday to talk about all the different projects they're doing all over the world. So I'll get to catch up with her and see how things are going. But
that's cool.
So that was like the main one. And then kind of like a total accident. We were staying at a hostel, and it was a bio hostel. So they have their own biology work that they do, farm work, and they ask that people that stay there work on the farm, and that's just what helps feeds everybody and kind of pays a little bit more for your stay. Mm-hmm. And one of those biologists, she really wanted to see. She was offered by from a scientist from the Black-headed Bushmaster Project to go tour and see one of the black-headed bushmasters in the wild and see what else they could turn up. But no one else wanted to go with her. And then we showed up and we're like, Fools. Oh yeah, we love snakes. Yeah. And she was like, oh my gosh, she was losing her mind. She didn't speak any English. I got kicked out of like Spanish 3 in high school. So my communication skills were awful, but we stumbled through. Yeah. And that she set up the tour, and we got to go on this hike with our guide. It was her, our guide, and then my friend Sean. He's a Colorado herper.
Oh, cool.
All of us went out, and we were hiking around because it's his job to go out every day and locate the bushmaster, see where it's gone, where it's moved. And I think they did have a tracker on it previously, but during our time there, they didn't have a tracker on it. So it was kind of like, he's like, I'm not sure if we're going to see it or not, if it moved, but I'll try my best. And so we go hiking in, we find this Ophaga pumilio species. It's Ophaga pumilio granulifera. So it's like red and blue, not the strawberry, but they're just a beautiful species. And he just picks it up and puts it on a leaf for us to photograph. And we're like, are you okay? Like, he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. You know, I do this all the time. And then he showed me pictures of his kids who live on the property because they own the property, holding coral snakes by the tail and all kinds of crazy stuff. Excuse me. Just on the property.
Yeah.
And then we just keep trekking along. I'm using my broken Spanish to try and figure out, like, has he seen eyelash vipers on the property, fertile ants, like what other species? And we're most of the messages are getting through, and we understand each other. And then he takes us to where the black-headed bushmaster was. It was chilling under this kind of stump on the edge of this creek, and it was kind of tucked back a little bit. Mind you, we're not allowed to hook or handle the snake. We're not allowed to use flash photography. Very strict rules on the tour. We had to sign a waiver and pay. So he's kind of messing with us, and he's like, the bushmaster is around us. It's here somewhere. He's like, do you see it? And it took me a minute before I saw it. And when I saw it, I just lost my mind. The thing was huge. Like it was coiled up, and I wrapped my arms in like a circle. It would be bigger than that circle, just of how big the snake was. And I just lost my mind. And then my friend Sean, it took him a minute to see it. He wasn't feeling good. He got food poisoning, we think, the night before. So he wasn't doing too great. But once he saw it, he perked right up, and that just made our trip. And we spent probably 30-40 minutes with it before our guide was like, okay, we got to start moving back, could try and look for some other stuff. And the snake was it was beautiful, coiled up under there. We were allowed to put a flashlight on it and photograph it that way. So the photographs were of the bushmaster in situ, and it was huge, just one of the prettiest, biggest snakes I've ever seen. And on our way back, we found a eyelash viper, which was really cool. That's only the second one I'd ever seen, because I saw one from another trip when I was in high school that I went down there to do something similar.
Right. Was it a yellow one or a greenish?
This one was green. Yeah.
That's the one I saw too. My daughter saw one that was bright yellow though. Like I was so jealous.
See, I want to go back now and try and find more variations of the eyelash vipers, and I want to try and find my own black-headed bushmaster by myself. But we'll see.
Speaking of the topic,
but we saw some other snakes on our way back. Nothing.
Any boas?
We did when we went to a day or two previously to Corcovado National Park, but also there, not allowed to handle anything. Right. Can't use flash photography.
You got to have a guide. We didn't end up going into Corcovado, but look. I kind of regret it. It was mostly because the kids didn't really want to go, and we didn't want to hear them whine the whole time. So we're like, fine, we won't go. But I was kind of bummed out. We want to go back just to go there. But
you have to. We went there and we saw a mom and baby tapir right off the boat on the beach. We saw another tapir that we got to go up close to and photograph. That's all cool. The primate species. Big red-tailed boa that I think was digesting a coati.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy. They're not small animals.
No.
Yeah. That's cool. We saw the primates down there. They're so cool. At least the four main monkey types. But that was fun. Crazy to see monkeys out in the wild. Hear those howlers like go off. And it's pretty crazy. And
they were coming like right up to us, like in Corcovado. Nothing cares that you're there.
Yeah,
which is just surprising. We got really close to a tamandua, which is like little anteaters down there. Yeah,
we saw one of those, but it ran away too quick. I couldn't catch up with it. I was bummed out.
That was an amazing trip. Costa Rica is probably one of my favorite places I've ever been to.
Yeah, it's really neat. We stayed in this tree house thing. It was like a Airbnb, but it was like a 4-story tree house in this huge like rainforest tree. It was a crazy cool experience. We had like monkeys, like I all of a sudden hear this little like, that like screechy little whisper type monkey thing. And I'm like, oh, cool. There's squirrel monkeys coming. Like, everybody wake up. We go out on the deck and they're just like passing by, screeching at us. It was really cool. Like, you're up in the canopy. So you're like eye level with the monkeys making their way through the forest, and, different bird species would fly in and, land on the, nearby, and it was really cool. And then down below they had some like trails. So we saw like dart frogs and smoky jungle frogs and all sorts of lizards. And it was really a neat spot. But that was around, what's the town? Not Puerto Jimenez. That's the bigger city, but it's like kind of the smaller. My daughter taught English down there on the Osa Peninsula. Oh, so wow. She went to Corcovado and saw tapir, and she was the one that saw the yellow viper. But I can't remember the town she was in. Just a smaller town, just north of Puerto Jimenez.
Okay.
Yeah, really cool place though. Maybe it's not. No. Anyway, yeah, my memory is not the best. Any listener of the podcast will know. but it was really cool to stay in that tree house.
That's really cool.
It rained a lot though those days that we were there, and I think they had like a minimum of like 3-night stay, and it was a little pricey, but what do you do? Right. When you're in Costa Rica, you might as well sleep in a treehouse.
Exactly. Yeah. That's really cool. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention, that while we were down there, a gold miner had been bit by a black-headed bushmaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and died from the bite. Wow. So all the locals were kind of not very happy when we said we're looking for snakes, like we want to see snakes. Right. But then other people were like, "Oh, come to our property. We have a lot of fertile ants. Like, move them off my property," kind of thing. Yeah, because like every other person we talked to, using my awful Spanish, they were like, "Yeah, I'd been bit by a fertile ants when I was a kid, or a couple of years ago." Like every other person we talked to had been bit by a fertile ants, which was just wild. Yeah.
It's nuts. Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you're living in the bush like that, or living so close. And I mean, it's really a cool system down there where they've really embraced that environmentalism. And I mean, I guess the downside is you got to pay a guide to go anywhere, but other than that, it's really good for the habitat. I mean, I'm happy to pay because it does go back into protecting wildlife, and it's really the tourism and in a big way that does protect their wildlife. And you go to some of the neighboring countries and it's just not the same there. You can't see the wildlife that you can see in Costa Rica. So definitely kind of a cool thing. But yeah, we got to see 3 quetzals up in, where was that? Up north, not Arnal, but the Monteverde. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool.
That was a cool thing. We did a bird tour there. And so same kind of idea, I guess. We had to do, and I think that kind of plays into the topic, right? Is that when you go to Costa Rica, a lot of these places, you have to have a guide. You have to pay somebody to take you out. You can't just go wandering around in the forest. So, you don't have really, I mean, I guess you technically can, but not in certain places like Corcovado. At least if you get caught, you're probably going to be in big trouble. So, yeah, I don't know how it is in the rest of the country. I imagine you could probably go out road cruising or something. We did a few nights of that, as much as I could talk my family into. But it was kind of crazy. We went surfing down on the Osa Peninsula, and as we were coming back onto the beach, there was like this trellis that went over, and it had vines and stuff growing on it. And one of the vines was moving, and I reached up and grabbed a vine snake. I'm like, I spent all this time looking for him in Arizona, and then all of a sudden it's just waiting for me, on the beach, right on the path. It was crazy, kind of a weird, unique way to find one. But
yeah. And it's just that whole area is just crazy, because we talked about trying to talk to like a fisherman and be like, hey, can you pay us to go see some sea snakes and try and catch it, put it in the boat, and then photograph it on the beach somewhere and then let it go again or something. But we didn't feel like our Spanish was good enough to try and do that.
Well, the nice thing about so she was in La Palma. That was the little town that she was in. And she had like a friend that was kind of leading the English, program or whatever. So she'd take care of all these American girls that would come over to teach English to the kids in La Palma. And she set up a boat tour of the Golfo, the Golfo Dolce or whatever the little gulf is, between the Osa Peninsula and the mainland. Crazy. That place is just flat water. Like there's no waves or anything, but we saw like dolphins, you can see whales out there. And then we were driving along and the boat, the guy that was taking us out, he just took me and my wife and our 3 daughters and three of our daughters. The one that was teaching English didn't go because she'd already been on the tour. But he's like, snake. And I'm like, what? And it was one of those yellow Golfo Dolce sea snakes. And I was pretty stoked. I was like, can I jump in with it? Can I swim with it? He's like, no, stay in the boat. But it was really cool. Like something I was not expecting to see. I was, of course, hoping to see one, but like, it was pretty cool. Just kind of a random occurrence. He's like, we usually don't see him this time of year. I'm like, sweet.
That's cool. Yeah. And the water there too is so warm. We swam there, and compared to like being by the open ocean, it was so warm, so nice.
Yeah. We go out at night and like you swish your hand around and all the bioluminescent creatures or whatever glow, and so like the water turns blue and you're swishing your hand around. It's pretty cool.
Super cool.
Yeah, cool place. That's awesome that you've gotten to go down there and see such cool stuff.
Yeah. Hopefully I'll go back down in a year or two.
Yeah.
I can't stay away from there.
Right. I have the same kind of things in my brain. Like, how do I get back there and, want to go see some cool stuff? Because my wife was really interested in going into Corcovado as well. So we want to go back down and see that national park at least. Yeah. So I guess, I'm talking too much as the moderator, but I guess that kind of brings up another thing is even more so like the radio tagged animals, where they know like approximately where they are, but then they can have the means to like pinpoint their location almost and find them that way. So I guess what are your thoughts on that? Maybe to start out the debate a little bit, does that, how do you feel about that?
I think I would count it. I did count it while I was down there. I've tracked rattlesnakes with telemetry and stuff before, and that snake is still a wild snake. It's had some human interaction, but a lot of the snakes that people are finding these days, if they're continuing to go to the same spots, have interacted with people before. They've been found before, photographed before, still living wild lives. But with using telemetry, there's still a good chance that you might not see that animal. You might be close to it, but you still might not see that animal, even though it's being tracked. And that's what our guide told us. So in that case, I did count it. I know there's a lot of other people that are stricter than I am.
Right.
Everyone has their own value system, I guess.
Yeah. I guess the other side of that is you did mention you want to go down and find one on your own, as you said. So maybe Rob can take it over from there.
No, agreed. And so I'm genuinely fascinated. Go from that perspective. What would you say? Right. Because that was your commentary. So I'm curious, why would you say that? What was it about either the experience that you had or the sort of contrary experiences you have when you just go afield yourself?
Yeah, I guess it was because of the experience I didn't have. Like, I didn't get to hook the snake and really see the power and intelligence behind the animal by getting to work with it, manipulate it, whatever. I guess that's the part to me that I really crave when I find an animal or am with a group of people, because I want to interact with it a little bit. Depends. Like, not every time, I'm not going to mess with every animal I see, things like that. But it's your lifer, you want to get those photos. I've never hooked a bushmaster before. So that was just a kind of like a bucket list item in a way. Right. It being such a big snake, such a rare snake, right. Just to go see it and just experience it, that to me is something that I feel really like I lacked. I got robbed from that in a way, but that's why I just want to go back and find another one. That first one will still be my first, but there's still more to learn, I guess. Right. Is why I want to go back and find more.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a ton of truth to that. Obviously, it's your truth, but I think we can all appreciate that as well. And a big part of honestly the joy for me in herping is sort of the research angle and the ideation and trying to figure out the what's and wheres, even in the context, right, the non-commercial context of, hey, let's go to this place or whatever. Finding the thing, seeing the thing is the principal joy, but there is sort of the type A joy in the research on the front end, the kind of building anticipation to the point where the first time, often on Australia trips, but certainly the first time that I'd gone to the Northern Territory, I'd been thinking about it so deeply for so long that by the time the trip actually came, it was almost like my enthusiasm had flagged because it was so excited for so long. And then we get there and have this amazing experience. But it was almost like I got to have two periods of joy, the research and then the actual effectuation.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And then
go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, that I guess when you've planned it, even though, you may be basing it off of INAD or, known localities or things like that. Well, I mean, some things there's only, so many places you can find them anyway, like sure. the Brettles python from the spring, we knew where to look. That's not the hard part, is just, locating one. There's probably right. Plenty that we're walking past, but they're in a tree hollow or up too high to see, or those kind of things. So, the fact that one was waiting on a branch that was about eye level, just where we wouldn't miss it, and that's just kind of that rare event of everything kind of coming together and getting lucky. But we also had some advice from a seasoned researcher who had studied Brettles pythons and knew kind of how he said, actually, like, just drive your vehicle down the creek and look up the tree. I'm like, yeah, I think the rental company might frown on that. I don't think that's an option. But he's like, well, that's kind of how we did the research. That's how we looked for him back in the day. I'm like, well, that's cool, but yeah, I don't think we're going to get away with that. So we just walked them instead, and some other advice that was shared, of kind of where the more effective places to look are at different times of year was very helpful and helped us locate that animal. But, we still put in the miles. I mean, it took us a solid week of looking to find one. So, and that's wow. The only one we saw. So, and we'd gone to other areas, and another group of herpers actually found one in one of the gorges we were spending a lot of time in. So they were there at the right time. We were in the right place, but they were there at the right time. And so it just kind of, there's no way to really predict where you're going to see something like that. You just have to have a little bit of luck, but also put yourself in the right place.
For sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, another critical component to this, right, and it applied in the context of your black-headed bushmaster, is the sort of, and I think obviously this is even more specific than sort of a general herp tour or whatever, and maybe some of those companies, the outfits that do that, do engage with sort of local stewards in the same way of your experience. But we're talking about, the context of private land or other barriers to entry, just in terms of access. It could be language. It could be needing a requisite guide, within the national park. You guys have hit on some of those points. But, I mean, you wouldn't have access to go and find that one because you'd be, at best, certainly not legal, probably not safe, access to just go do that.
Yeah, definitely not.
Right.
So, I mean, in that context, then I suppose it's sort of, there are things where you can, it's sort of both, right? There is a public access population, and then there's non-public access populations and things. And in those contexts, maybe you draw a dichotomy in a different way than if you just looked at it and you said the thing that jumped to my mind as I was talking through it is like, well, if you took a real hardline view on this, then it actually would be impossible to ever see a Komodo dragon, right? Because there's no non-mediated context where one exists as a wild animal. Right. So you could never see one. It could never be on the list if you took a real hardline stance on this.
Yeah.
For sure. And I have a friend that when we go herping, if it's a lifer, he has to be the first one to touch it. And if someone else touches it, he gets pretty upset. He may or may not count it. Kind of depends on the mood he's in. But everyone kind of, I feel, flexes on how they count lifers a little bit. You know, everyone still kind of has their specific path that they want to take, but that's not what always is presented. So they kind of have to flex a little bit. Like I went to Utah earlier this year, and we went looking for Sertalis fitchi. I found one. My friend Hunter found one. My friend Miles found one. But then we were all giving my friend Sean shit for not finding one because he and Hunter are very similar, where they count it if they find it a little bit, but he still counted it at the end of the day, but he wasn't as happy about it. He still wanted to find one. We still spent a couple hours trying to find just one more snake for him,
right?
Just to count. But
you guys just sort of sat at the car and let him go look by himself.
No, we tried. We're like, if we found it, we just point and yell.
Right.
But we just found like a big reddited slider crossing the road. That was the only thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But
then we all found. Yeah, that was.
Where were you in Utah?
Oh my gosh, I'm totally we were in Salt Lake City, just south of the Big Salt Lake. I can't remember. It was some big nature preserve.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we had all found a rubber boa. We stumbled upon a rubber boa hibernacula, and
cool.
As soon as one of us spotted one, another one of us spotted another, and then another. And then we had to wait. We photographed him, brought him back, and then there was another boa in the same spot.
Wow!
So we all found our own boa, which was pretty nice.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very nice. Yeah. Well, I've got a den site by my house, so if you're ever around here in early spring, I'll show you where that is. It's pretty cool. You can see both Sertalis and elegans at the same place, but they kind of segregate. You'll see mating balls of one or the other, and it's a pretty cool spot. Yeah, definitely.
That's really cool. Yeah, rubber boas and rhino rat snakes, two favorite snakes. So
yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other context, right, that was germane for Justin and I this year was our experience looking for Eastern Massasauga in Western Pennsylvania, right? So there's a handful of counties that theoretically still have them, and there's theoretically more than one publicly accessible spot, but certainly there's one that is sort of the spot, right, that you can go to. And you could hope to stumble onto one. Nipper sort of wound up facilitating Ranger Taylor for us, and Justin then, as part of the squad trying to out there to turn one up, did so, and that was great, and got to pit tag it, as part of that process. And it's sort of,
that's pretty cool.
That didn't look like our normal situation, right, in all sorts of different ways. But, in many ways, to the extent that this is a question of, is it sort of upgrading or downgrading your experience, right? When you're talking about, this is different. All those things, I think we want to have sort of take the positivist approach that all those things are upgrades to the context, that our interactions with Ranger Taylor and with that, with the class, and you certainly it was an upgrade to your experience, right? It wasn't just, I got to take a picture. I got to pop a pit tag in this thing. That's pretty cool.
Right. And I think so too, like before we were engaging with the group, we were limited to the trails. And if we had were limited to trails, we probably wouldn't have seen that individual. But I'm like, they're walking through the grass, so I'm going to do the same, even though I'm not necessarily, part of this group. And I guess the other thing that kind of ran through my head was, well, if somebody else finds it, does that count?
Exactly right. How would that feel?
Yeah. And I think, we didn't have to consider that because I was fortunate enough to spot one before everybody else. And, but that was the only one that we got to see. And obviously, like, once we found it, we went with the ranger to do the pit tagging, and, you got to touch it because they tubed it and stuff like that. So, we wouldn't have been able to do that if we would have found it on our own. And then Ranger Taylor facilitated us taking pictures of it. He let us kind of lay down in the grass and shoot the animal for, 5, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, and until everybody was happy, and just super, super helpful and very facilitative. So, there was nothing about that experience that I think could have been improved by doing it on our own, out somewhere else, not inside a park. But so it was a cool experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And I think, again, to harken back to the sort of the context of it, what, Brendan, so you're considering going on other such ventures that support sort of conservation and things. So obviously, despite saying, hey, maybe I want to try and look for a different one in the context of the Black-Headed Bushmaster, you're also, more than happy to pursue those ventures those being the way you see stuff going forward. So, how does it, is there any additional joy actually brought along by the fact that, hey, I'm funding, the maintenance of this property associated with preservation of the species, or even research associated with the species, facilitating that research? Does that actually bring its own sort of positive element to the party?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it was very fulfilling in that aspect. And to me, it kind of solidified that, like, they're not dumping the Bushmaster out of a bag or something like that. Like, it's still living its wildlife, and this money that I'm happily paying to go see this species is protecting it and a plethora of other species. Because we saw several other species on the property that we didn't even see on the trip, which was just a huge bonus. We found those. Our guide found another snake. I can't remember. It was a rear-fanged venomous snake. And it was just, that was just incredible. I know I'm hoping to go to Nepal next year to join some researchers in the off season of tourism. During the rainy season, they go out to the national parks and stuff, or kind of on the edges, because they're not supposed to be in the parks during the rainy season. And they're discovering new species every year. So I'm hoping to join them and
that's crazy.
Yeah, see what we can find. They discovered like a new species of gecko, a new species of frog this last year. So that to me, that it makes sense. And when I was down in Arizona last year, I met up with Dustin, and something that kind of struck me is there was this German guy that we had met that day, and he was cruising around. We had just gotten our second green rat snake, and he came right up and he's like, can I photograph it? And we're like, sure, like come and photograph it. And one of my friends kind of made the comment, was like, are you going to count that as your lifer? And I'm like, in his case, being from Germany, and given the amount of time that each of us has on this planet and the money that we have, something like that, I probably wouldn't count that. I wouldn't do that just for myself. But if he counted that, I wouldn't be offended or anything, because there's only so much time we have, and to see something like that is pretty special.
Yeah, you're going exactly where I was thinking of it, kind of as a natural next step of, on the spectrum of things, of approaches, from having to be the one who sees it or touches it or finds it or whatever, to the other end, of saying, or even further than that, right? Going to a place that would represent a range extension. Dr. Joe brought that up as saying an even more, out there perspective where, terra incognita for the species of their form or whatever.
That's like a Jordan Parrott ideal, like going, I've seen it so many times here. I'm going to go, find it where nobody's found it, that kind of thing.
Doesn't even count if it's not where nobody has ever found any of them, let alone this particular animal. To exactly, I mean, even a more extreme case, right, Brendan, of saying, okay, it's one thing when he's right behind you guys or whatever it is, as opposed to, and there it's a matter of a moment or two, and it's literally just, oh, your car was in front of his or whatever, to, okay, sometimes with the commercial tours, as I understand it, right, they'll, if they can safely do so, collect it, bring it back, and then like they're taking pictures in the morning and things like that. So that's a whole nother range, right? And then what if, even within that, you could kind of parse out and say someone was asleep at the house versus, being on a different trail, and so then they see it back at the camp instead of that. And it's like, well, is it different if you were walking someplace else than if you were asleep, or if you turned up in the morning and just got to see it when you weren't even on the property when it was found? Right. Those are all kind of different answers themselves as well.
Definitely. And I guess too, if you were to look at it from a birding perspective, when people put stuff on eBird, hundreds or thousands of people are seeing that same bird in that same area, and they're all counting it as their lifer. They're not as cool as us and get to handle it or anything, but they're still counting it as their lifer because they saw it, and lots of people are seeing that throughout the day. So that's always interesting. I know some kind of the same thing could be said for the popular milk snake spot in Colorado. People come from all over the country and find the same milk snakes year to year usually, and people count those as their lifers, and everyone has a good time, that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, I know we've, like, one of the spots Dustin took us to, like, one night we were there herping, and all of a sudden this tour bus rolled in with, like, 8 people jumped out and start combing this area. And we just found a clobber eye, a banded rock rattlesnake, and just next to a log or something. And we were like, just kind of watching it. We taking some pictures, and we thought, they didn't even come over and ask, oh, are you guys looking at a reptile? Like they were not curious at all, So I think, from that perspective, like if you're there, as a group or something, but I guess there is some kind of ideals of like, well, we're going to respect their space or whatever. We're not going to jump in their business or whatever. So I think it could go either way. I'm more of a curious person, like, hey, what you looking at there? And it's interesting too, because in Australia we found a Boyd's forest dragon, and we were just sitting staring at it, taking pictures, like just watching it, and several people walked by on that trail and paid us no mind at all. It's like, people just really aren't very curious, like it's kind of interesting, or they respect our privacy, which either way is kind of,
Well, and Justin, the one that jumps to my mind, sort of in the same vein, right? When we were in Joshua Tree, and it was a coach whip that was in a bush, right? As we were on a hike, and it was meandering through this, and I was trying to corral it, and these footsteps, we were out there a ways, and these footsteps won't, stop coming. I'm like, stop moving. This is not helping. They're super reactive snakes anyway. I'm like, stop moving. And Justin, eventually you're like telling me, it's a group, two people that aren't, it's not us, man.
It's not us.
They don't care.
Quit yelling at people, Rob. Yeah.
They didn't even engage back. Maybe that's just California for you. But they just kept making their noise, doing their thing.
Right.
Me be damned. So.
Yeah. Oh. I guess I think a lot of people will have the idea of multiple lists, right? I've heard of people doing this where they have a list of things they've seen in the wild, things that they found on their own in the wild, and that nobody else saw, or so they have different, like they'll count it at different gradations. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm kind of working on a separate list right now where I'm trying to see different species in different counties throughout the state and record that. So for the Western Massasauga, I'm trying to find those in more counties. Like I've seen them. I've had other friends find them, like in Otero County, and I'm just minutes behind them. I still haven't counted them because they'd give me shit for it. And I probably would have, but it's happened on 2-3 separate occasions at this point, and it's driving me nuts. But I've only seen them in 2 other counties in the state, and I'm trying to find them in more. And there's been more county records. Like I know there's a couple counties that I'm never going to find them in, just because I don't have the time.
Right.
Getting older, trying to put more time into my career and get a house someday or something like that. I can't spend every weekend down in extreme southeast Colorado trying to find every snake in every county. But that's definitely, I'm starting a second list for at least things in Colorado for counties. But I agree with those. I think those are fun. My friend Hunter and Sean, and I have another friend Hayden. They're all working on their list because they've seen pretty much everything in the state at this point. I'm not one of those where I'm necessarily trying to find everything in the state. If I see the species that's native to Colorado outside of the state, I'll count it as I've seen it throughout its range. Like eastern hognose snakes, for instance, they've been found in Colorado. The spot where they've been found at has kind of been decimated due to they're trying to rebuild the habitat and remove invasive plants, but might be hurting the snakes population as a whole. But I'm probably not going to be able to find snakes there for like eastern hognose anyway for another 10 years or so, just because all the work that's been done. So I'm trying to go find them in either Kansas or Nebraska and just be like, okay, they're close enough to Colorado. I've seen them. Whatever, and we have California king snakes in Colorado, the stream southwest corner of the state. Right. I've seen them there, so I've counted them. I've seen them there. I've seen them in everywhere then at that point. But there's still more. I'd still like to see those species again.
Yeah. It seems like there's, when you're herping a lot and you found, like pretty much everything you can see in the state or whatever, then you kind of get more, fine tuned
granular
or whatever.
Granular.
And you're looking, like, I think about, like Rye Jones in Utah with the milk snakes, or Thomas Wilder with the mountain kings, or Brian Eager with the milk snakes, or Mark Hazel with the tricolors are really popular in Utah, and they're kind of a harder find, but they'll just try to find one in each county, and try to extend the range and try to find them in mountain ranges where they haven't been recorded and things like that. And they make some really cool discoveries, and I think to some extent, like if you're just like, okay, check and move on, you're not really maybe doing much of a service. It's more selfish. But if you're out there like pounding new mountain ranges looking for a new range extension, Jordan with his boas, that rosy boas, like same kind of thing is, you're really kind of adding something to the knowledge or the science, where you can identify them outside of their normal range. And I think that's a useful progression. I guess it's hard with me because all my interests lie in Australia. So I spend all my free time, for a couple of weeks over there and all my time off of work. But I think the pandemic really kind of made me appreciate the backyard a little bit more, where I want to see all the species in Utah. It's like, how have I seen more species in Australia than I have in my own state, like comparatively or percentage wise or whatever. So I kind of had a more of a goal, especially during the pandemic, to find everything in Utah. And then especially if, I'm releasing a field guide, I might as well know and have seen, as much as I can. I'm still missing a couple species, but someday I'll get there. But it's kind of a nice goal to have to get familiar with your state, because really, I mean, you can't, if you're going to Australia, pretty much all you can do is tick them off. There's not really a lot of, scientific value you can add to some extent. I mean, obviously there's things.
Depends what it is and what's the concept. I mean, heck, the you're eating the high
right.
That's pretty cool either way. Right. Yeah, and it's not that it's unknown, the Jamada, with that consumption, but at the same time, that you're getting closer to what's the anecdote in the journal anecdote? You have a couple, right?
Yeah. Like the field or natural history notes, or like range extension you can do. I know Shane Madsen did one for his find of the leaf nose snake in Utah, that kind of thing. And it's funny because like earlier this spring, somebody else found one too down in St. George area, or in the same area where he found his. So it's like, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Once in a while that just get lucky, I guess. But yeah, those kind of things that can add value. I think that's something to at least consider, when you're thinking about where you're going to go spend time herping
or what you can do. It was within the last couple of weeks. We were speaking, maybe it was before or after the show, right, Justin? I was talking to somebody, and Brendan, to the point that you're making on, it's getting harder and harder to go, be a herper bro down in Southeast Colorado, that whomever it was that, it was Casper, right? I think is when we were the context we were talking about it, that I had the question was, have you seen all the stuff in Colorado? And it was like, no, with all the functionally Kansas snakes that are in Southeast Colorado and the number of trips it would take to find those, that I'm far more likely to see all the pythons in Australia before I am to see all the snakes in Colorado, just based on how far away Southeast County is, and my interest in time and resources and commitment and all those things, right?
You have finite resources, finite time, so you gotta make choices, and I guess our interests play into that. Where we're spending a lot of maybe an extraordinary amount of time looking for crotalus or other things that might be most people would consider a waste of time because they're very difficult to find or whatever, maybe not in the area anymore, but we're going to give it a go anyway, kind of thing. I guess same kind of thing with pythons of Australia. You got like one shot to make it happen in a week, and you might get lucky, you might not, so it's just the way it goes. I guess everybody's got their own lists or their own goals
Well, and just to interject, I do know, sorry, Brendan, before, because I feel bad. Franklin Erickson. I was thinking of Erickson, and I was thinking, I said Casper, but Franklin. So now you don't have to look at me like I had two heads. Sorry, Brendan, go ahead.
No, you're all good. I guess just like kind of going back to the point of, what people count and don't count. I found it pretty interesting, at least from what I've seen, that people have found like clipped, like snakes that have been hit by cars, and stuff like that, but they're still alive. Right. And they tend to hang on to them until the morning and see if they're still kicking then, and if they're still kicking at that point, they tend to count it. If not, then they usually don't count it. But I always think that that's kind of like an interesting morbid part to the hobby, because you might have been moments, you might have seen the snake been hit, you saw it there live, but then it got hit by a car. Like that one is, morally, I'm very conflicted on that point if I would count it or not. Right.
Right. But here's another scenario. Dustin and I were walking on either side of like a vegetative area, and we both heard the rattle at the same time, and kind of there was a price eye. It's like, well, I guess this is a joint find, or does this count as a my find, or my find only? So you got to kind of asterisk that, I guess, and say, I don't know. I think for me that's fine, but I was happy to have, I guess, legit my own price eye not long after that. The third one of the day was just me that was there and found it. So, but I guess the same kind of thing where the first time we saw a price eye, Dustin was actually standing over top of it, and Chuck heard it. And so, Dustin spotted it first, but Chuck heard it first. So it's kind of like another, kind of conundrum or whatever. Like, what do you do with that? Yeah. Is the detection by sound more important than seeing it, or?
That's pretty funny too that you bring that up, because when I was with Dustin down in Southeast Arizona, we went looking for price eye. We went to his spot where he normally finds them. We didn't find one. We went further down kind of the mountain in an area he hadn't checked out before, and then I turned up a price eye, and a couple other friends turned up a price eye on the way to me when I was like, I found one, and that I think that's always kind of interesting too in the spots. It's like going to the milk spot in Colorado. Right. To me now, it doesn't feel as special. Just like, because it's like, okay, you're going to find them. Someone else did the work to make this spot. So I go there and I try to look for box turtles or hognose snakes, but I don't really take photos of the milk snakes there anymore. And I'm trying to really focus and hone in on like why are milk snakes at this spot so
what is
abundant?
It about that spot?
Yeah, what is it about it? And I think it's because the boards are in a lower lying area and the water collects more a more humid microclimate is provided under those boards potentially. So I want to try and replicate that elsewhere in that same county, but I also want to try and figure out how to get a better grasp of the species throughout the state, because I've cruised them in southeast Colorado. I've flipped them in the adjacent county to where I live, and I can never seem to find them very consistently. And I think that's always something that I think a lot of people are starting to strive to at this point in herping, is they pick one thing they really like and they're trying to replicate success. And I think that's one of the harder parts. Like once someone shows you like a spot, and then you kind of start asking these questions, like, how can I find that elsewhere?
Right.
If for me anyway, I know a lot of other people do it. Some people might not. Some people might just be fine at the given spots, but at a certain
that level of expertise, right, that you're talking about highlights the point Justin's making, whether you share it or not, right? You're kind of cultivating that scientific knowledge, that understanding of, exactly, the spot that you're alluding to, right, Brendan, of saying both in the, so there's the super micro that you're talking about of like, okay, this is what's happening, but like take a half step back and it's why this area as opposed to this area that's a mile away, or 5 miles away, or what's the confluence of factors. And it's really the ability to deduce what that is and then prove it out is really cool.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
I saw a post by Noah Fields where he flipped a coach whip and it's a tricolor, but not a milk snake, scarlet snake, under the same rock, right? And the coach was in shed, but he was making the point of like, I rarely flip these rocks because, if you keep flipping them over and over, you kind of almost ruin the habitat underneath them. So he's like, if you find a rock like this, cherish it, don't overflip it. Like resist the urge when you go to this area, because you might ruin it for the animals that do shelter under there. So I kind of have a hard time with that sometimes, because like, it seems like you can go into disturbed habitat and they'll use these board lines board lines are probably a great example of that, that they just keep using the same areas. You can find the same snakes under the same boards or things like that. I was in California and was told about a board line from a friend. So I go there every time I'm at my cousin's, because it's like a 10-minute drive, and it's like a spot where I know I can go and find stuff at least. And, but there's like, I lifted one board and there was a cow king and it shot down a burrow, and I came back like 10 minutes later and it was just under the board again, came back up. So, very accommodating snake, but, things like that where, I wonder how much of that is dependent on the area, of course, and depending on the nature of the cover and things like that. It's hard to say, but I do think there is something to that. If you're lifting a rock in the wrong area, it could dry out underneath and ruin the suitability of the rock for shelter for a certain species.
For sure. And I think now, just seeing how the hobby of herping has grown so much in Colorado, that spot for milk snakes in Colorado has been hit a lot. I'm seeing people post pretty much like every week at this point, even still this late into the year when we're not receiving much rain, but they're still hitting those boards. And this year, when I went out for my one time that I tried to go in the spring, it was different. It was not as there were not as many snakes. The habitat was a little more disturbed. It wasn't as nice as it was before. And I think that's kind of an unfortunate, like we all want to find stuff. We want to keep finding stuff, but at a certain point, I think we all need to challenge ourselves to move forward and try and find stuff elsewhere, because like that spot's special. Like I think that's pretty amazing, right? You can go to a spot and pretty much be guaranteed that you're going to find what you're looking for if you're looking for a milk snake or something, and that'll be cool to like take people out of state, to share that with them. But when you're hitting a spot too much that's causing that much damage, it kind of puts a damper on the spot and the community as a whole, and people get angry and it causes drama. And I think, I don't know where I'm going with this, I guess, but it's just kind of sad to see, when I was shown the spot, it was like, respect it, do this, do that. And it's just interesting to see how herping is going to continue to change in terms of that and what people count as lifers, because like people count all those spots as lifers. They're given, they're easy. And then it'll just be interesting, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so bringing us back slightly in the conversation, right? The thought had struck my mind when we're talking about all these different lists, and in some ways it's sort of like fantasy football in that, no one cares about your team, or what, like it feels so important.
Yeah.
But I was about to say, but only to you, although your previous remark, Brendan, had made me hold my tongue on that, was to say, and the people that you communicate it with. Right. It only matters to you and all the people that you talk about it with who are going to judge you for whatever you're saying or doing. Right.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, did you count it on your list? Well, yes, except when you're talking to the person in the other car.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I do like that point you hit on, like when you were out with Dustin, you might go to a spot where you've seen them before, or it might be a guaranteed area or a really good spot, board line is there. So it makes it easy because you just lift up the board. And Noah, on that post with the rocks, he did make a distinction between like a board line and a rock line. He said, the under the board or the tin or whatever is a little harder to, mess up as compared with under a rock for some reason. He's found, at least, and he's pretty, accomplished herper in that regard. But, so, having that knowledge of where a board line is, or, that kind of thing, makes it easier, because it's a little harder to find him in more natural settings. And I think that's common knowledge, with people, is like, you look under garbage and you find snakes. It's kind of makes it a lot easier than having to try to lift some giant rock that you may not be able to get in the right spot again, and you're messing up habitat kind of thing. So I think, but if you're local, I think that point you made of like, don't mess with those spots. Don't mess with the easy spots. Go to somewhere where it's a little more of a challenge. If you've already seen the species, why do you go back to the easy thing just to see them again? I don't know. It just doesn't seem as cool in my mind. Like, it just seems like the guy who's goes back to high school to beat up on play basketball against the little kids, and he's in the NBA or something, like, who cares if you can dunk on a 17-year-old if you're in the NBA, you don't get any, I don't know. That's kind of a stupid analogy, but here we are.
Yeah. But there's like no benefit. There's no benefit.
Exactly. Move on to another spot, get or make your own spot, find your own area, or set up your own board line or something like that, where it can just be you, or you can study an area and get to know, like, oh, I've seen that snake before. I've seen that Gila monster 3 years in a row, or whatever, you can kind of get to know better and actually make, more of a contribution in your observations. Like, there's methods to publish even just, certain observations that you make in the field. I just published one where my wife and I found a mulga, a king brown, that was consuming a dead on the road death adder, was peeling it up off the pavement and trying to eat it. And it actually, when we started taking pictures and stopped the car, it took off. So I took the death adder over to it and it finished eating it. So it was like kind of a cool observation. I'm like, I need to publish that sometime. That was like in 2011. So, 14 years later, I published that and it got accepted recently to Herpetological Review. Now, I'm not sure what's going on with Herpetological Review, but I haven't seen like an issue come out for a few months. Like I see like the January issue, but I haven't seen anything since then. So I'm like, did I?
You finally getting around to it? Put the end to it.
Push the journal out of print or something. But yeah, so I'm hoping to see that soon, but I don't know what's going on there. But things like that where you have there's an avenue to publish even for, just casual observers or naturalists or whatever. You don't have to be a professional herpetologist to get your note published. You just have to kind of follow the format. And, that, like I mentioned, Shane Madsen also published around the same time his observation of the leaf nose snake, where hasn't been seen since, the 90s or something. So it's like kind of a cool observation, and you just publish it. And he got, I don't know if he heard back or not, but it's worth trying anyway. Why not? We've got one with the Brettles python that we found where it had shed its skin. The shed skin was floating in the breeze, just above, like near a tree hollow. So we assumed that's where it came out, shed its skin, came down where we could see it. It was a beautiful, freshly shed animal. So it's kind of a cool thing. That's really cool. It's a neat observation, like, of something in the wild, and that's the place for it, So I think we can contribute as kind of citizen scientists in a way.
Definitely. And I think too, like, for people traveling out of state, right? If you go to a spot where they're easy,
right?
Just get your one, then move on. Yeah. Try and find them elsewhere. Try and find them in a more difficult location, so that you can count your lifer,
right?
And then count maybe on another list, something else.
I found it in a harder spot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Found it. I mean, you could make that distinction between disturbed versus natural habitat.
Yeah. Lots of different lists. And there's this one, someone had a really cool observation of a desert king snake eating a gopher snake, or predating a gopher snake on the road, like stuff like that, just cruising different roads and just being out there and looking.
Right. I was going to say, in that context, it's just the act of doing it, right? Doing it enough to run into those. It's not just finding the snake, it's finding the snake doing something cool.
Yeah, finding the albino snake. Right. He could be Jeff Lamb and find 30 snakes in a crack,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, to that, actually, I have a friend of a friend found an albino garter snake not too far away from where I live, and he captured it, and it's in captivity now. But my friend that was holding it for another friend, we photographed the snake. We haven't posted or anything, but we're not really like counting that as our snake. We just kind of photographed it to photograph it. That's kind of another lifer thing that people would consider, just finding those rare snakes. Like, that's an albino snake. That was wild. That was just crazy.
Right.
Stuff like that is always interesting. And, once in a lifetime kind of opportunity that people may or may not count, and are just kind of different.
Right. Yeah. Well, we were on the grounds of the Alice Springs Desert Park, and we had a friend that worked there, and he was showing us around, and we were kind of talking. We were outside of a building. He's like, a lot of times you'll see wild central netted dragons or Ackie monitors, Varanus acantharus here. And I'm like, I heard some kind of scuffling under a rock, and I look over, and there's a pair of Ackies mating. I mean, they were wild, but they were on the grounds of the desert park, just kind of hanging out. And saw this. Somebody posted recently their trip, and they went to the desert park and found wild parentes, walking around the grounds of the desert park or nearby. It's within their range, within their habitat, and they just happen to be on the grounds. I definitely think I definitely counted that as an Ackie find in the wild, but we also saw one kind of, off the road on, out in the West Max or whatever. But, I definitely would have counted that if that was the only Ackie I saw. It was a wild Ackie, mating in the wild. Like, it's
right. How would it be any better if it was at the Airbnb as opposed to being at the reptile park?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I think there's a wide range of, what we should consider as viable or reasonable thing. I actually published that observation too in the BioWac Monitor Journal. So it was super cool. It was a cool observation, really beautiful Ackie too. A unique pattern on the female that was just, she blended right in with the rock. It was cool.
That's really cool. Oh, like just another point of the aspect that we haven't talked about, or like invasives, for instance.
Right.
maybe some people would count that as a different python. Yeah. Do you count that as
in Florida?
Florida invasive, but as a lifer still, or just on another list kind of thing? I don't know. Invasives, I haven't found too many, so I haven't really counted many as anything. Like I've seen green iguanas in Florida, but I've also seen them in Costa Rica, so it's kind of like doesn't matter at this point. But
exactly, yeah. I agree, though. I think there probably should be. You can go see a reticulated python in Puerto Rico. It sounds like an albino if you want.
Descendants of captive animals.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
Yeah, or to that same perspective is what about like a conservation project where they've released a bunch of offspring? Do you count those? Or if they're out in the wild?
How do you know? Right?
Yeah, as long as they're not dumping them out of the bag when you come along.
Exactly right.
I think it's probably reasonable to count those as legit.
Or like I think in New Mexico they've reintroduced Bolson's tortoises that were around us, but like before the Ice Age or something like that. And then when the Ice Age happened, they were extirpated from New Mexico. Like that's, to me, is just like, I don't know how I would count that, Is it a reintroduction or is it now an invasive? Like biologists seem to think it's one thing. I might think it's another, but it's a pretty strange topic.
But
I
even
think
that's probably there's probably access questions and problems with that. I would assume that's probably on a private land and things. So it sort of mitigates some of that, right? You have to then be kind of integrated into the experience of what that represents to maybe have that access. Louisiana pine snakes, obviously, kind of has some supplementation stuff. Some of those are accessible, some of them are not. It's kind of the same issues. So I'm totally with you. I think it's interesting. The burn question obviously is an interesting one. I think I would have to frame it as, in Florida versus in Vietnam or whatever, is probably how I would frame it in my own mind. But
yeah. That's probably a separate list, right? Yeah.
I think it's a separate list. Yeah. The other question, I think the thing that comes up in my mind about the tours, and maybe I'm too cynical, and maybe that's the problem, but I have this sort of vision in my mind, when we were talking to Zach, about it and things of like, oh, it's just this van and then, sort of spread out and the experiences. Is there some implicit limit on the number of people? Or is it like that you actually know the people that are within the group? Does that make it a common venture versus not knowing them? Even if you met them that morning because it's Dustin's buddy or whatever.
Right.
Is there some lack of familiarity or, that combined with the commercial nature of a venture would make it so that that's different than just being, oh, it's Brendan's buddy. I this is our first time meeting him. I don't know him, but, that makes it all right. But the only common factor being that we're paying this, guy number 3, we're both paying him money to be here. That's our only common link. Is there a difference there?
Oh man, for that, I don't think so. I wouldn't consider it that way, but I think like the only way I'd differentiate it is like if I'm down in Southeast Colorado, I'm cruising with you and we come across 2 other herpers that I know, but they found like a speckled king or something like that. I wouldn't count that as my find or anything like that. Like we didn't organize an outing together.
If you said, hey, we're all going to go, this is what we're going to do that same morning, is that enough of a common venture or no? It's just hard out.
Yeah, I think that would be enough, depending on what we're doing. Usually in that case, if we are driving in separate vehicles, that's kind of where I draw the line a little bit, just because like we're spread out by so much distance at that point.
Even though the idea there is to increase the odds of someone in the group running into one.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, right. That just might just be me being more picky. I know other people aren't like that. I think when I'm trying to go to the West Slope to look for con color, because I haven't seen my lifer Colorado midget faded, that we're going to be taking 2 separate vehicles, and I have friends that are part of the project for going out to the whole range trying to find them. So I think if someone finds one in the Jeep and I don't find it or something like that, I'll have some tough questions to consider there.
Well, in Australia, we couldn't all fit in the same vehicle, so we were obviously in separate vehicles, and I mean, it kind of worked out to the detriment of the other guys, because we were in the middle vehicle and the first vehicle went past and was out of range, and then we came along and there was a Parenti crossing the road, and so we got to interact with this Parenti, and then the last vehicle didn't have their walkie-talkie on, so they didn't know that we were saying, hey guys, get up here quick, see this Parenti. So we were the only ones that saw that one. Fortunately, we saw one later in the trip, and so the other guys got to see the Parenti. But I guess that's the downside of it, because if you're not in the same car, you don't get to see that. And we missed out on one of those beautiful Western brown snakes, the orange ones with the black heads, because we were not in the vehicle and we were out of range of the walkie-talkie. So it was the same kind of deal. We missed out on that one. And then Aspen and I were walking near each other, and he was tracking a mulga, and we kind of both saw it, or he spotted it in the wash. And so we both got to see this mulga, and everybody else was too spread out, and it took off before they could get back to see it. So, I think there's those aspects of maybe some of those things that, you don't get a count because you're not close enough to witness the animal, and we're not experienced enough with the mulgas to grab it by the tail, or Western browns to grab them by the tail and hold on to them until the other guys get there. So
I guess in that case too, just because that reminded me, if I am herping with other people and they're in a separate vehicle, I guess if the animal is still left on the road, no one has touched it, right? They can see it kind of still doing its normal thing. Then at that point, I would probably count it, just because it's relatively natural, hasn't been tampered with. That would be as far as loose as I would get with that.
Well, here's another example of that kind of same mindset. Is I came across a red diamond rattlesnake in Southern California, and I was waiting for Zach Loafman and some of the others from the CCR crew to make it there, and they showed up maybe 20-30 minutes later, and we went back to that spot, and I said, I found a red diamond rattlesnake, it was on the road right here. And so we kind of fanned out and looked, and I think it was Kayla spotted it, and it was underneath like a downed yucca branch or something. And, kind of undercover basically, but she spotted it. So I think, that would definitely count, even though we kind of knew one was in the area. There's no guarantee you're going to see it again,
Oh, for sure.
I've had that a ton of times. Like, for example, with the box turtle in Pennsylvania, we saw it. We were taking pictures of it, sitting watching it move around, and then we left. And I was thinking, I want to see if I can find that thing, again, because I wasn't the one that spotted it. I just wanted to see if I could find it because I knew about where it was. I went back and searched all through this area. I couldn't spot it. I couldn't find it. So it's like it just, either went further afield than I thought it had, or blended in too well, or went down a burrow or whatever. I couldn't find it. So.
Well, and anyone who's lost a snake in their house, right, can attest to the fact that, it can be an entirely, non-natural setting and not blend in whatsoever. And it could still be impossible to find, Right. So I think that's, in that same context of once it's on the loose, we're talking about these introduced, where augmented populations and things versus the Bolsons being different, right? We're talking about a solely introduced population. I think it puts me, Justin, more into the spot that you were describing of saying like, okay, well, if I didn't know they were coming and they released them yesterday and, I turn up one today, then I think I count it because it's like, well, again, that I didn't know it was happening. I wasn't coming to seek that. Just that's how the situation we had something like that with the Zanata on the more recent trip where we had, I found it on the crawl. It crawled out onto the trail right in front of me after Eric and Brandon had already were down the hill, and then Brandon had posted pictures on Instagram, and someone had reached out and said, "I think I saw that same snake today. I think I flipped it, when it was under a cap rock or whatever." And maybe that speaks to sort of the disturbance of that. Right. I don't know whether it was or wasn't the same one. But if it was, it's like, well, maybe that actually sort of speaks to the potential for destructiveness associated with that interaction is something that was hidden away under this cap rock or whatever. Now maybe it was out on the move to crawl right in front of my feet, a couple hours later or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess to that point, kind of along those lines, my life for speckled king snake was a king snake that my friends had found a year prior, crossing on the same stretch of road, almost exactly a year apart, which was just wild. Which other people made fun of me for that. It was like, oh, that's a snake that's been found before. Like some people are like, you can never know if a snake has been found by someone before or not. Usually,
unless
in that case,
distinct features of some kind. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, which we pulled up and we're like, that's the same snake, which is just completely wild. I still count it as a lifer. Some people are like, you shouldn't count that. Yeah, I thought that was interesting data and interesting observation. Yeah. And then checking on iNaturalist like a couple days ago, I think someone had found the same king snake, unfortunately, had been hit by a car
in that same area.
Yeah, I can't for sure identify it just because I can't zoom in as much on the photo, but I still think that's interesting data. Like the snake is moving relatively the same direction,
predictable pattern
every year. Yeah, which is just, to me, that's mind blowing. I thought that was a pretty interesting observation. No one else thought that was very interesting. I thought it was really cool, but
well, we got very excited about the Gila monster that we found, either us or a friend, found it, and it's been found 3 times, and had the distinctive
over the course of years.
Over 3 or 4 years. And, I made the joke, like we were photographing and I said, I've seen this one. I'm going to go find another one, which is not an easy task in Utah, but I went around the corner and there was another one crawling across the slick rock. So, got lucky or whatever, but, hey guys, here's another one. They're like, yeah, right. Yeah. The other one was, I think this is my favorite recapture or refind story of all, is the picture on the cover of the second edition, the more complete carpet python, is a Flinders Ranges, Gammon Ranges carpet. And then Jordan found that same snake like 8 years later in the similar, same area where it was found the first time. And so just so cool, And one other thought that kind of came to mind was, in science, a lot of times you don't get to be an author on a paper unless you've made an intellectual contribution, right? And I think about this in the context of a Rob Stone trip, is like, if you're not helping with the planning or making suggestions, or like out there, like, okay, I know where we're going. Let's look into the trail system, or maybe I could split off here or look here, those kind of things, or, ooh, that looks like a good hillside. If you're just kind of along for the ride and looking at snakes when people find them, should you be counting that? Is that just basically an unpaid, herp trip basically, or herp? So just kind of a little devil on one shoulder thought I had.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's fair. And the question with that, is kind of, well, if that's sort of what's fun for you as, participating on those trips, then undoubtedly that's good enough for your list. Mm-hmm. And you're not engaging with people that are going to be pedantic enough to be arguing that it's not good enough in some way, that it's somehow deficient to claim.
Yeah.
But I like it. I like the
idea. Yeah. I know there's some trips I've participated on and I didn't do it. I wasn't part of any of the planning. I'm just here for the ride. And I still counted snakes as my lifer and stuff, and didn't really contribute very much, but yeah, I think that's a very interesting point.
Well, it seems like, a lot of people, there's obviously people that prefer to herp solo or with, maybe one other person that they know very well and that they herp a lot with. And hey, I want to go herping with you sometime. They're like, yeah, sure. And then you never go with them because they don't let you know when they're going out or whatever. And so, I think there are some people that just are wary of that. They don't want to, ride the coattails of somebody else. So they're just going to go do the work themselves and find everything on their own. And I think there's merit to both ways. Like I enjoy herping with groups just because it's more fun, it's a little but at the same time, being out by yourself in the wilderness can have risks, of course, but also can be enjoyable. And, kind of ground you a little bit, give you some quiet time by yourself to reflect and hopefully see some cool reptiles. But, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I definitely prefer herping with more people than solo. But solo, I think, is one of the best times to self-reflect. And I felt like I learn more when I'm by myself herping than when I'm with other people. But
right. And it's all on you, you can't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit more pressure that way too. And I think there is some pressure too when you're planning a trip for a group where you're like, picking the areas you're going and how much time you're going to spend in those areas. And, you're tying in, rental places and stuff, and that makes it difficult to have more flexibility without losing a lot of money, to say, hey, we're just going to ditch this area and forget we paid for this hotel room or whatever. And now we're going to go somewhere else and pay again for a hotel room. Yeah. Right. Or this hotel looks sketchy. Let's go somewhere else. Yeah. That's
3 different rooms for one night. Yeah,
exactly. Not the best scenario, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Yeah,
definitely.
Yep. That's I guess the whole fun of this whole thing, right? Is these things they can make you think and make you debate and make you question your own list. Maybe, I don't know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Any other things? Do we cover everything? You have any more thoughts or?
I don't have any at the moment. I'm sure stuff will come to me like tomorrow morning and I'll be like, oh gosh.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll just have to have you back on again.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, it was great hearing about your herping experiences and some of your cool trips you've been on. And yeah, I'm sure there'll be many more in the future. So we'll have to
I hope so.
To chat about those. So
yeah, maybe we'll have to figure out a trip to Nepal or somewhere else.
That's so cool. That would be really cool we'll have to definitely hear about that if you make that happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Nepal's been a bucket list country ever since I've been in like 8th grade.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think of it as really like a herp spot, but yeah, they're finding some really cool stuff out there.
So, yeah, it's just not very, it's an underrated country in my opinion. And there's more scientists. Like we're going to go see Gharial if I end up going, like that's part of the trip. So, which is
that's
cool,
yeah.
Crocodilian to check off the list.
Right. And like, not many have those kind of things on their list usually either, so.
Yeah. If I could get one in hand though, that'd be cool, but very unlikely.
Good times. Well, where can people see your herp finds or,
Yeah, I'm on Instagram just as my name, Brendan @_Hettinger. And I'm also on Facebook. Same thing, just my name.
Cool.
I post some stuff there. I'm not as active on Facebook, more so on Instagram, but
that automatic population feature is really nice where you can post on Instagram and automatically post to Facebook as well.
Yeah. I haven't done that yet, but I just post
either. You're just the tech advanced guy.
I don't know how I came on that, but it was like, do you want to post this also on Facebook? I'm like, yes, that would be much easier.
That's awesome.
Well, yeah, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been a fun discussion, and hopefully our listeners have enjoyed it as well. But I know I sure have. I can't talk about herping enough. It's a good time. So,
well, I'm just excited. I'm very excited to be on here. This was actually the first podcast I had ever listened to. A friend of mine introduced me to a long time ago. So it's pretty wild that I'm on here talking with you guys and all that. So,
well, we appreciate the support. Yeah. Thanks for listening and glad to have you on. So
thank you.
We'll have to get out in the field now and go herping sometime. We'll record from the field.
That would be fun.
It's always fun. Yeah. But cool. Well, I kind of like to end the show with maybe some cool things that you've seen in herpetoculture or herpetology or anything like that, if there's anything neat. I ran across a publication that documented a unique neck skin structure in spotted turtles, where when they retract their head, there's actually like their neck skin kind of comes over and completely engulfs their head, and it's kind of a protective skin layer. And they've called it the clemus fold, which is, makes sense because it's clemus guttata. So kind of an interesting thing I'd never thought of. And they likened it to like the hinge shell of a box turtle or something like that, where that extra layer of protection from their valuable head parts. So kind of a unique thing. So next time you're handling a spotted turtle, look for the clemus fold.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I guess we talked about the other thing I was thinking of was the Noah Fields rock conversation. So I'm glad we could fold that into the discussion tonight. But
oh, definitely.
Yeah. I don't know. Any cool things you've heard lately or read or?
Oh man, not recently, but something that I just think is wild is that there was a paper about the angulate tortoise retaining eggs, females retaining eggs or an egg and laying it on the surface of the ground just a couple days before it hatches to try and combat potentially having clutches be swayed one way or the other in terms of sex, to try and prevent them from all being, I can't remember if it's male or female, hotter or cooler, but the thought is that the egg is colder inside the female. So when it's laid, it'll be the opposite sex of whatever everyone else has been laying in the ground. I can't remember where that paper was posted, but that's just something I think about a lot.
That's really cool. Yeah. It's almost like, I was listening. Oh, it was on Snake Talk, I think. And he was talking about, he went and studied skinks in some area and found like 5 different modes of reproduction, like live birth and laying eggs. And then there was one where they ovulated this tiny, like pinprick sized egg, and then it would develop and basically hatch inside the female. And he's like, I discovered a new mode of reproduction. And his major professor's like, no, you didn't. And then he's like, here are the samples. He's like, yes, you did. You did this. Oh, it was Lori Vitt. Really cool interview on Snake Talk. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But watch lizard researcher for a long time. Really interesting stories for sure. Yeah. So
very cool.
All right. Well, cool stuff. I mean, there's just so many, neat things that happen in herpetoculture and herpetology and all sorts of stuff. So I guess our friends that attended the Daytona show had a good time there, and it would have been nice to go, but what do you do? I guess you can't do them all. Yeah. I'd rather be herping, I guess, than deli cup herping, as I affectionately refer to it as. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening and for the NPR umbrella for hosting us. And we'll catch you next time for Reptile Fight Club.